Hi, bookish friends. Not gonna lie, guys, August was not the best reading month, unfortunately. It wasn't horrible, but it definitely wasn't the best month that I've had. I actually filmed a continuing series reading vlog that actually hasn't gone out yet. It was supposed to go out, but it didn't. So it's coming out next week, actually. So some of these books are in that reading vlog if you are interested. The first one that I read was The Horse and His Boy by C.S. Lewis. This is the third book in the Chronicles of Narnia series. This is children's fantasy. Out of the three that I've read so far, this was my least favorite. Basically, you have this boy who is essentially like a slave. A strange man comes to town with his horse, and the boy realizes that his horse is actually a talking horse from Narnia, and the horse wants to go back to Narnia and the boy wants to go to Narnia, so they get together and go on an adventure to make their way back to Narnia. This book, out of the three books that I've read so far, is definitely my least favorite, and I ended up giving it a 3 stars. I did like this. I think that it was a cute addition to the story. I don't know if we'll see these characters again. I feel like if we see these characters again, then it will feel like more purposeful. But if this was kind of like a novella of like these random characters that come to Narnia, I would say that this does not really need to be included in the series. I don't know. It wasn't bad, but I would say that it's pretty slow. It's a lot of like walking through the woods and like just not a lot happening. Just basically like trying to make their way to Narnia with like a few little setbacks, but nothing too crazy. And I think I really like there to be kind of like action and like stuff actually happening in the book to be drawn in. The next book that I read in that video was Legendary by Stephanie Garber. This is the second in the Caraval series. This is YA fantasy. This is essentially about a magical carnival that shows up in different places every year. There is a game that the players in the carnival have to complete in order to win Caraval. I ended up giving this one a 4 stars, but I will say that it's kind of teetering between a 3.75 and a 4. I definitely liked this one more than Caraval, the first book, but a lot of the things that I didn't really like about Caraval, like the excessive metaphors, if you guys have been watching my videos, you know, with Caraval, the metaphors were just like killing me. There's just like so many metaphors, and it just loses the effect eventually when you use metaphors so often. My overall feeling is really kind of a like disappointment, because I feel like, as I said in my last reading wrap up when I read Caraval, the concept of these books is stunning. The idea of it all is so good, but I just don't feel like the execution is done very well. And it just unfortunately kind of makes the series a little bit flat. I am gonna read the third one because I'm already over halfway through at this point, and I do want to know what happens. I was intrigued by the story enough to read the last one, I think. The series definitely interested me, but I think really I was kind of trying to read through this to get to Once Upon a Broken Heart series, because I've heard that that is absolutely amazing, and I just kind of wanted to know what the whole like backstory was for those books. I was definitely hoping that this series would be better, but it's not to say that this is like bad either. To me, if I read this series when I was in high school, or even maybe like early college, I feel like I would have eaten it up. But again, I just can't really like pinpoint what exactly it is, but like it just doesn't really hit the way that I would hope it would. I actually just went in and changed my ratings. So for Legendary, I put it as a 3.75 because I had this next book sitting at a 3.75, and I liked this book a lot more than I liked Legendary. So that didn't make sense to have Legendary at a 4 stars and this book at a 3.75. So anyway, that book that I'm talking about is Fire by Kristen Cashore. This is the second in the Graceling series. This is also YA fantasy. This is basically about a girl who can control minds, and there is a war coming, and both sides of the war are trying to overthrow the king and get to the throne. And this girl ends up joining the fight to help the king stay on his throne. I actually really liked this a lot. I know that I said The Horse and His Boy was slow and I didn't like it, but this was also not very fast-paced, I will say, but I still liked it. It's hard to really pinpoint why I like things and why I don't like things sometimes. I think for me, the way that the characters are written or something, I just felt deeply connected to these characters. I don't know what it was. The character development was probably just a lot better than The Horse and His Boy. I was super attached to these characters. This is the second in the Graceling series, but this is kind of like a prequel because this story actually happens before Graceling happens. It doesn't involve any of the characters besides one character that are in Graceling. So I'm really hoping that as the series progresses that these characters actually come back because I love them so much. I love these characters more than I loved the characters in Graceling. The next book that I read was Beach Read by Emily Henry. I wanted to read this before the summer was officially over, and to me, August is the last month of summer. So I had to read this in August. This is adult romance, and it's about two authors who were like kind of rivals in college, and they part ways and they end up having lake houses right next to each other. And the guy writes contemporary fiction and the girl writes romances. January, the woman, thinks that Augustus, the man, can't write romances and vice versa. So they're switching genres and writing a book over the summer in each other's different genres. And obviously it ends up in a love story. This book is so hyped up that my expectations were probably out of this world, and that's probably why I ended up rating this a 3.75. I swear I've heard nothing but good things about this book, but this was probably my least favorite Emily Henry book that I've read so far. I've read Happy Place, People We Meet on Vacation, and Beach Read. Not to say that this wasn't good, because it was good, but it kind of was, you know, like your typical romance. It wasn't anything out of this world like some people have portrayed it to be. Obviously, Emily Henry is like the queen of banter, so there was some really great banter in here. There was moments where I was smiling to myself. January irritated me slightly, not a lot, but I feel like I tend to get irked with romance novels that have a third act breakup type of deal, because the third act breakup doesn't ever feel like it's for a real reason, you know what I mean? It just feels like either the characters are being like petty or they're just not communicating properly. But I do think that this book was a really great depiction of grief. And the very last book that I want to talk about today is Demon Slayer, and I cannot pronounce the author's name, so I'll just show you. This is actually a manga. I've never read manga before. This was my first one. My brother got me this book because he knew that I was interested in trying out manga. This is about a boy who needs to save his sister from the possession of a demon. So she's possessed by a demon and he has to go on a journey to try and figure out how to get this demon out of her, basically. I ended up giving this a 3.25. I read this in about 45 minutes because it's just so fast-paced, so that's one of the really good things. This is also like my first graphic novels. I definitely loved that aspect of it, just being able to fly through a book in 45 minutes. That's like unheard of with a regular book for me. But I will say that I did find this particular manga, I don't know if it's like all manga manga. I'm not gonna say it's all manga, but a little bit cheesy. But I do think that the story was actually really unique, and that's one thing that I really loved about it. So I loved how fast-paced it was and how unique it was. I am still not sure if I'm gonna continue the series. I think there are 12 books in this series. So yeah, I don't know. Maybe I'll continue it, maybe I won't. I haven't really decided. I guess maybe I'm still kind of making up my mind about how I felt about this. I think it was just something very different that I've never experienced before. It wasn't bad, but it wasn't one that I was like, oh my gosh, I need to pick up the next one. So like, I could probably live the rest of my life without knowing the rest of this story. So those are the 5 books that I read in August. I would love to know if you guys have read any of these or what you read in August. Definitely chat with me in the comments down below. That's my favorite thing, to chat with you guys. I would love it if you guys would subscribe and stick around. I am a mom of 2 little boys, 6 and 2. I am a solo parent and a widow. And I would love it if I could make this YouTube channel kind of like my full-time job to support my little family. So if any of that stuff appeals to you at all, I would love to have you stick around. But until next time, guys, I'll see you in my next video. Bye!